Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well and you're ready for OJ. So, look at her. She's gathering her strength so she can torture us again for today. But I got good news. We're not going to see Marcia all day today. We're not. She's going to pass the baton for a little bit, which I don't know if that's good news or bad news actually now. Now that I think about it. But let's go. Bobby, don't leave. Don't leave me, Bobby. Marcia's about to speak. Don't you want to hear her say EDTA? You don't need coffee. I have enough coffee. You're fine.
The wound to his left abdomen, if you recall that one, the one that severed the aorta, a wound that ordinarily would have bled profusely into the abdominal cavity. And you expect to find all of that bleeding in the abdominal cavity if the blood pressure is normal. If the person is breathing, that blood pressure will force the blood into the cavity as a result of the wound to the abdomen. But there was very little blood to the abdominal cavity. And like Nicole's final wound, there was no evidence of movement on Ron's part. The margins of the wound were clean, which indicated that there was no resistance offered by Ron. And this wound was inflicted when Ron was very near death already. It was an unnecessary wound. It was a wound inflicted to make sure that Ron was dead. And it shows that the defendant took great pains to go back and deliver the final coup de grace to Ronald Goldman. But no matter when each wound was inflicted or in what order, the bottom line is very clear. The defendant could not leave a witness alive to tell what he saw. He had to deliver the fatal blows and make sure that they were fatal. The defendant surely didn't anticipate that Ron would be there that night. He came to murder Nicole. But once Ron showed up, he could not allow him to walk away with the knowledge of what he had seen. Ron was a witness who had seen what no one was supposed to see. Ron was the ultimate threat, so Ron had to die. And the intent to eliminate a witness, ladies and gentlemen, is a premeditated and deliberate decision. It is a cold and a calculated decision, and it is not a decision that takes very long. As I pointed out before, the jury instruction tells you the law does not undertake to measure in units of time the degree of thought that goes into the thinking called premeditation and deliberation. And now you can see this is a perfect example of how such a decision can be made in mere moments. The defendant has Nicole Brown down. Ron Goldman comes walking up with the envelope. A witness. And the decision is made. That's all it takes. I can't leave him live. I can't let him stay alive. Ladies and gentlemen, this is strong and is compelling evidence that proves that the murders of Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown were premeditated and deliberate murders of the first degree. Now, okay, let's address the special circumstances charged in this case, because with all of this evidence of premeditation and deliberation, it is after you determine the degree of the murders that you go on to determine whether the special circumstances are true. Now, if you find that the evidence establishes murder in the first degree as to either Ronald Goldman or Nicole Brown, then you have to determine whether the special circumstances are true or not. Now, in this case, the decision is very easy, because the only special circumstance that we have charged is multiple murder. And for this special circumstance to be found true, the defendant must be found guilty of both murders, first of all, obviously, and then, secondly, at least one of the murders has to be determined to be murder in the first degree. So if you find murder in the first degree as to one victim and murder in the second degree as to the other, the special circumstance is true. If you find murder in the first degree as to both victims, the special circumstance is true. However, if you find murder in the second degree as to both victims, then you must find the special circumstance not true. Now, the defendant is also charged with having used a knife, a deadly weapon, or dangerous weapon in the commission of these murders. And if you do find him guilty of the murders, of course, that decision is very simple. It was obviously a knife that was used to commit these murders. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've proven with all this evidence that I've reviewed with you easily beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed the premeditated and deliberate murders of Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown. And I spoke to you before a little bit about direct and circumstantial evidence. This is what they call, well, this is a physical evidence case, obviously, and they call it circumstantial evidence. Now that I've reviewed all of the evidence, you can see what I'm talking about when I say a circumstantial evidence case gives you much more assurance of the guilt of the defendant. And that is because of this. In a direct evidence case, you may have one eyewitness to tell you, I saw it. That means you have one thing to rely on. But in a circumstantial evidence case, especially this one, you have many things to rely on. You have the blood at Bundy. You have the blood of Nicole on his socks. You have his blood on the rear gate at Bundy. You have Ronald Goldman's blood in his car. You have his hair on Ron Goldman's shirt. You have the fiber from his clothing on Ron Goldman's shirt, on his socks, on the Rockingham glove. You have the Bronco carpet fiber on the Rockingham glove. You have the Bronco carpet fiber on the knit ski cap. The wealth of evidence in this case is simply overwhelming. If we only had the Bundy blood trail that matched the defendant, it would be enough proof to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If we only had Nicole Brown's blood on his socks, that would be enough to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If we only had Ron Goldman's blood in his Bronco, that would be enough to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But we have all that and much more. And now let me summarize for you what we have proven. One piece of the puzzle. We've proven the opportunity to kill. We've given the time window in which he was able to kill because his whereabouts were unaccounted for during the time that we know the murders were occurring. We have the hand injuries that were suffered on the night of his wife's murder to the left hand, as we know the killer was injured on his left hand. We have the post-homicidal conduct that I told you about, lying to Alan Park, making Alan Park wait outside, not letting Cato pick up that little dark bag. His reaction to Detective Phillips when he made notification, when Detective Phillips said to him, Nicole has been killed, instead of asking about a car accident, the defendant asks no questions. We have the manner of killings, killings that indicate that it was a rage killing, that it was a fury killing, that it was not a professional hit. The manner of killing that indicates one person committed these murders, one person with the same style of killing. We have the knit cap at Bundy. We have the evidence on Ron Goldman's shirt of the blue-black cotton fibers, the defendant's hair. We have the Bruno Mali shoe prints, size 12, all of them size 12, his size shoe, all of them consistent, going down the Bundy walk. We have the Bundy blood trail, his blood to the left of the bloody shoe prints. We have the blood in the Bronco, his and Ron Goldman's. We have the Rockingham blood trail up the driveway, in his bathroom, in the foyer. We have the Rockingham glove with all of the evidence on it. Ron Goldman fibers from his shirt, Ron Goldman's hair, Nicole's hair, the defendant's blood, Ron Goldman's blood, Nicole's blood, and the Bronco fiber, and the blue-black cotton fibers. We have the socks. And we have the blue-black cotton fibers on the socks. And we have Nicole Brown's blood on the socks. There he is. I haven't even spoken, you haven't even heard yet about the motive. You haven't even heard the why of it, the why he did it, and you know he did it. Now, these murders did not occur in a vacuum, and it's very important evidence that you've heard in the beginning of this case. They occurred in the context of a stormy relationship, a relationship that was scarred by violence and abuse. And this important evidence completes the picture of the defendant's guilt as it explains the motive for these murders and shows you what led this defendant to be sitting here in this courtroom today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clark. Mr. Darden, are you ready to proceed?
Well, there's no better time than right now, Your Honor.
All right.
May I?
Just want to know if you
That
want to
is
make some
someone's
response,
handle.
But if you're ready to go,
I'm ready to go.
I think it's twitchy.
proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know, they asked me to do the summation Marcia Clark just did for you, but I told them no, it's too long. I'm not the kind of person who likes to talk that long, and Marcia isn't either, but she had to. And I think that one of the things that you probably gathered from hearing her today is that this case really is a simple case in its essence. When you get down to the bottom line, this case really is a simple case. All you have to do is use the tools God gave you, the tools He gave you to use or utilize whenever you were confronted with a problem or an issue. All you have to do is use your common sense. The defense would have you believe that this is a complex series of facts and evidence and law and science and all of that. Not really. Not really. You have to question or wonder how it is that a lawyer can summarize a case in 8 hours when presenting the case took 8 months. It's a simple case. But there's been a lot of smoke, a lot of smoke screens, a lot of diversions, a lot of detractions, a lot of distractions. And in some respects, there's been an attempt to get you to lose focus of what the real issues are in this case. And that takes time. If I could give you any advice as jurors, any advice at all, I would say to you, use your common sense. When you get all of this evidence and go into the jury room, and after you pick a foreperson, take that common sense that God gave you, take the evidence
Common
that
sense.
the prosecution gave you, and the defense
Okay,
evidence.
now he's just stepping well over the line. I mean, okay, that he looks sharp. I like that suit in this picture. But he just told a jury of Americans to use their common sense. Oh, this will go well. That's great advice.
Go into that jury room, sit down, spread it out, using that common sense, ask yourself a question. What does the evidence show? What does the evidence show? And when you look at it in the simplest terms, what you're going to see is blood in the Bronco, a blood trail from Bundy, blood in his bathroom, blood on his socks. Simple evidence. You can look at a chart and see what the DNA results are. It really, really won't be that difficult when you use your common sense and when you get down to the bottom line and when you put aside all of the distractions and all of the smoke that has been blown throughout this courtroom and in your direction. Now, it's been a long time since I've had an opportunity to speak to you, and unfortunately I wasn't here during jury selection, and so I didn't get a chance to talk to you and introduce myself to you during voir dire, and so you were sort of given the Darden shock treatment, I guess. You saw me literally the first day you came into the courtroom, the first day we began taking evidence literally, and I got involved in the case, and we didn't get to talk a lot. But let me say this to you in the limited time that I have. You are an amazing group of people. You've been sequestered now longer than any jury in the state of California. I think Judge Ito alluded to that before. You've spent months in sequestration. I guess you haven't been able to watch your favorite television programs or football. Maybe you missed the NBA season, I don't know. But as you sat there in sequestration, the rest of us, these people, we all got on with our lives. We went home every night. We saw our families and our friends. We continued the personal relationships that we had. And you haven't had a chance to do that for 8 months. And all I can say about that is that you are an amazing group of people. And I thank you for that because you have paid a very, very significant price. You have made a commitment to justice. You have made a commitment to see to it that this case is resolved fairly and correctly. And you made a commitment to see to it that the law is followed, that the police follow procedure in the law, and that there is no conviction in this case unless the evidence is proven to you, unless its guilt is proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And I thank you for that. Because that's what you should do. That's what the community should do. A trial is supposed to be a search for the truth. And sometimes the truth is uncovered or revealed at the end of a long road, at the end of a long journey. And this has been a long journey. But let me say this to you, that tonight, the whole world is watching us tonight. They're watching me. And they have listened to the evidence and they watched the witnesses testify here on television. And they want to know what you're going to do. And we want to know what you're going to do. There are some people, I suppose, who think that justice in this case would be to just ignore the evidence and say he's not guilty. Some people think that justice in this case would be to just jump to some conclusion, some silly conclusion, some conclusion not based on the law, and forget about the evidence. Some people think that because the defendant in this case is a celebrity, that perhaps he is somewhat above the law, that there ought to be special rules for him, or that somehow he should be treated differently than any other defendant. But that's not justice. And there are some people that think that because Furman is a racist, that we ought to chuck the law out of the window, throw it out of the window, that perhaps it shouldn't be applied in this case. Well, that's wrong. And that's not why we're here, because we don't ignore the law just because of the status of a defendant, because of who he is or because of who he knows. That isn't justice. You're here to ensure justice. I'm here to ensure justice. And we all know the rules. And the rules say, and the law says, that he should not kill, that he should not have killed these two people. And the law says that if you believe that he killed these two people, and if you believe that it has been proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt, that you should find him guilty. You heard Marcia Clark, and you've heard the evidence, and you've seen the evidence. And you're reasonable people. And you know, we know. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, we know. And it's unfortunate what we know. What we know is the truth, and the truth that we know is that he killed these two people. Now this man, this defendant, OJ Simpson, we believe that given the state and the quality of the evidence, is guilty. And there's nothing wrong with voting guilty in this case, given the state of the evidence and the quality of the evidence. A vote of guilty in this case isn't a vote for any interest group in particular, or any interest group at all. It isn't a vote for the prosecution, for Marcia and I. It certainly isn't a vote for the LAPD. And it's not a vote against anyone. It's not a vote against the defendant. It's not a vote for the victims or the victim's family. When you go into that jury room, open-minded, and fairly and conscientiously consider this evidence, and then cast a ballot, a vote for guilt or innocence, based only on the evidence that you've seen in this case, and only on the law given to you by Judge Ito, when you cast a vote on that basis, then you're voting for justice. You're voting for fairness. You're doing the right thing under the law. And that's what we're going to ask you to do. Now, they say that justice is supposed to be blind and all of that good stuff. I know you've heard all of that before. But we just have to believe, Marcia Clark and I, that justice is blind in this case. There have been lots of issues. Lots of issues that came up in this trial. This trial has been an amazing experience. I'm sure you would agree. But even though there are a lot of small issues, a lot of other issues, a lot of little distractions here and there, you're here to address a single issue. This is a single case. Okay? One issue, did the defendant kill these two people? One defendant, OJ Simpson. You heard from the defense in this case, and they presented testimony about slurs, epithets as they call them. A bunch of nasty, hateful, low-down language used by Mark Furman. And I'm not even going to call him Detective Furman if I can help it, because he doesn't deserve that title. He doesn't warrant that kind of respect. Not from me. But this isn't the case of Mark Furman. This is the case of OJ Simpson. And let me say this to you, if you will allow me to, and I don't mean to offend you or demean you, and I hope that you don't feel that I am. But this is the case of OJ Simpson.
What about juror 7?
The case of
What
Mark
about
Furman, if there was to be a case. That's a case for another forum. Not necessarily a case for another day, because today may be the day. But it is a case for another forum. Another jury, perhaps. This case is about this defendant, OJ Simpson, and the M word, murder. It's not about Mark Furman and the N word. And you know what that is. I'm going to ask you to consider the fact of his misstatements or lies or untruths, however you want to term it. Because you have to consider that. That's the law. You have to consider everything Furman said on the witness stand. Because that's evidence in this case, and I want you to consider it. I want you to consider all the evidence. So don't think that I'm saying, hey, just overlook it. Just overlook what he said. Just overlook the fact that he lied about having used that slur in the past 10 years. But I am asking you to put it in the proper perspective. You decide what it's worth. You decide what it means. If it helps you in assessing his credibility, and it should, or his lack of credibility, I don't know, then you use it. But please just remember, Furman isn't the only issue in this case. And his use of that word is not the only issue in this case. And you have to be concerned about that. I have to be concerned about it as a lawyer for the prosecution in this case, because it apparently was a very, very significant event for the defense. I mean, you saw all those people that came up to testify about Furman's use of this word. And then at one point, you heard a tape of Furman. And that was Furman, by the way. Okay, no doubt about that, using those slurs. And you heard a tape of him using those slurs. And it had to make you angry to hear him say that. Made us angry. But that wasn't enough. Not only did you get to hear the words, you were given the transcript was scrolled across the elbow. Remember? So you could hear it and you could see it, but that wasn't enough. You had to have a transcript for some reason of the words as well. A lot of emphasis on that. I don't know why. I know you do. But it's evidence, just like all the other evidence in the case. Attach whatever value you think is appropriate. I would say use it to assess its credibility. Any other use you want to put to it, look to the law, look to the instructions that the judge gives you. Ms. Clark mentioned to you that I was going to talk to you about domestic violence, and I'd like to do that right now if I can. And I did that, I suppose, when I began speaking with you back on January the 24th. Was it the 24th? That's a long time ago. You're probably like me. You didn't think it would ever go on this long. Well, you're almost there. It's almost over. But we believe that this evidence of domestic violence is very important. It's important that you understand the nature of this man's relationship with one of the victims in this case. It's important because when you consider it, it may help explain to you, or it may suggest to you his motive for killing Nicole Brown, and perhaps his motive for killing Ron Goldman as well. And the law allows you to use this evidence as you attempt to determine whether or not there was a motive to kill. You have Project 2.51? And as we search for the motive jury instruction, let me say to you that you can use it for other reasons, for other purposes. This evidence is being given to you with certain limitations, I suppose. And the judge will explain to you what those limitations are. But you can use this evidence to determine whether there's a motive to kill. You can use this evidence to help in the sense of you're deciding whether or not the killing was premeditated. And if you find that it helps in terms of identification, the identification of this defendant as the person that killed these two people. Wrong one. You can use it. But when you look at this jury instruction entitled Evidence of Other Crimes, you see here at the bottom where it says a motive for the commission of the crime charged. You see that you can use this evidence for that purpose. Evidence of other crimes, the 1989 spousal battery incident. You can use that to look to see if there was evidence of a motive. But there's also something called Project 2.51, and it's entitled Motive, and it reads as follows. Let me read it to you. First of all, it says that motive is not an element of the crime charged and need not be shown. And that's important. Ms. Clark talked to you about premeditation and malice and forethought and whether the killing is willful and deliberate and all of that. We don't have to prove to you that the defendant had a motive to kill. We don't have to prove that at all. It just so happens that in this case we have that kind of evidence. The motive is not an element of the offense charged. And 2.51 also says that the presence of motive may tend to establish guilt. If you find that we have presented sufficient evidence of motive, then you should use that evidence as you attempt to determine whether or not the defendant is guilty. But you can use this domestic violence evidence for a number of reasons and in a number of ways. Now, when I spoke to you back in January, I told you, I promised you, I think, that I would expose to you the other side of this man, of this defendant. I promised you that I would expose to you the private side of him. That part of him, the side of him, was capable of extreme rage, jealousy, and violence. And I said to you back then, I said to you and I asked of you that you consider the nature of their relationship, his relationship with Nicole. Because to understand what happened at Bundy, you need to know what happened between them during the 17-year period that they were together, off and on. Because when you look at that, you see a motive for killing. Now, I'm sure the defense is going to get up here at some point and say, that domestic violence evidence is irrelevant. And they may say to you that just because this defendant had some marital discord or violence in his marriage to Nicole Brown, that it doesn't mean anything. Well, this isn't a just because issue. This is a because issue. It is because he hit her in the past, and because he slapped her and threw her out of the house and kicked her and punched her and grabbed her around the neck. It's because he did these things to her in the past that you ought to know about it and consider it. And it's because he used a baseball bat to break the windshield of a Mercedes back in 1985. And it's because he kicked her door down in 1993. You remember the Gretna Green incident? Remember the 911 call? It's because of a letter he wrote to Nicole, around June the 6th, talking about the IRS. It's because he stalked her, because he looked through her windows one night in April of 1992. They may say that the defendant's just looking through a window late at night. We say that's stalking. It's because of all those things, and because all of these things, alongside the physical evidence at the scene, the bloody shoe prints in his thighs, the blood drops at Bundy, the blood on his sock, the blood trail to Rockingham. It's because when you look at all of that, it all points to him. I'm not afraid to point to him. Nobody's pointed him out and said he did it. I'll point to him. And why not? The evidence all points to him. And it's also because when you look at the bloody ruthlessness, my mouth is getting dry, of these murders, and when you see, as Ms. Clark pointed out, that these killings were rage killings, rage, and you have to say to yourself, well, who in the past has ever raised a hand to this woman? Who, during the days and the hours leading to her death, was upset with her? And as Ms. Clark alluded to earlier, you're too kind. And as Ms. Clark alluded to earlier, the killing was personal. The way it was done. The way it was done, this is personal. Somebody had a score to settle. Who had a score to settle? With Nicole. When you look at all of that, you look at the domestic violence, the manner of the killing, the physical evidence, the history of abuse in their relationship, the intimidation, the stalking, you look at all of it, it all points to him. It all points to him. Now, they may not think this evidence is important, but it was important to Nicole Brown. You heard Detective Mark Furman testify about the 1985 incident. And let me say, Furman. All right, I've said Furman about 50 times. Let me let you know this. We're not hiding Furman. Okay? He's too big, especially now, to hide. So, hey, Furman testified. Furman described for you the 1985 domestic violence or domestic abuse incident or incident of violence or incident of abuse or disturbing the peace incident, whatever you want to call it. But in 1985, Detective Furman was not a detective. I just call him Detective G. Furman was a patrol officer, and he went to 360 North Rockingham in response to a call. And you recall the testimony. He saw Nicole sitting on a Mercedes, as I recall. The window was bashed out. Fenders were dented. There was a baseball bat nearby. The defendant was walking along the driveway. Furman had a conversation with the defendant. Nicole was crying. Her face was covered with her hair. She was holding her hands to her face. You remember that testimony. That was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Furman went to 360 North Rockingham in response to that call. That's 1985. 1994, Nicole's dead. When you look at the relationship between these two, and you reflect back on the testimony from Christian Breitbart, and you think about the 911 calls and Officer Edwards, and you think about the day of the recital, you think about Denise Brown and what she had to say about the defendant. Remember that time at the Red Onion when he grabbed her by the crotch in front of a bar full of strangers and said, "This is where my babies come from, this is mine." Remember that testimony? This relationship between this man and Nicole You know, it's like a time bomb ticking away. Just a matter of time. Just a matter of time before something really bad happened. You know, you meet people in life, and there are people with short fuses. You know, they just go off. And there are others with longer fuses. You know, it takes them a little while longer to go off. And relationships are the same way sometimes, you know, especially violent, abusive relationships like this one. This thing was like a fuse. It was a bomb with a long fuse. And there were incidents along the way. And along the way, as each incident occurred, that fuse got shorter. If nothing else, that fuse was lit in 1985, that night when he took that baseball bat to her car. And we don't know the reasoning behind his decision to do that. We only know that he did. But when you stop and you look at it and you consider the conduct, breaks the windshield, bends the car up, uses up a baseball bat, that's a pretty novel approach. The wife is seated on top of the car crying, face covered, hair over her face. If nothing else, look at it this way. What message does that send to Nicole? I mean, what are we going to do with this evidence? How do we evaluate this? When a man takes a baseball bat to his wife's car and just beats the heck out of it. If nothing else, it sends a message to her. It instills fear. Wouldn't you agree? And would you agree that it suggests to her that this can happen to you? That maybe you'll be next? See, that fuse is burning. It's burning in 1985. It is burning in 1985, and 1985 was the year of their marriage. The fuse is lit, it's burning, but it's a slow burn. We next go to 1989. You heard from Denise Brown on the incident, you know, she testified about 1989. Detective Edwards testified about 1989. I said before, you got to go back. We have to go back and look at their relationship. We have to go back in the past to see how we got where we are today. Because when you do, you see a pattern developing here. You see that fuse is lit. In 1989, it was New Year's night, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. And as I recall, we called to the witness stand a 911 operator, and her name was Sharon Gilbert. And that night, that morning, she received a call. The caller never identified herself. The line was left open. The call came in, the line was left open. The 911 operator stayed on the line and listened in. And as she testified here at the trial, if you stay on long enough, if you're the 911 operator, you get a fix on the origin, the address, from where the call is coming. And she stayed on the line. She determined that the call was coming from 360 North Rockingham. And she listened in for a few moments. You recall that tape? Can I play that for you? It only takes a couple seconds. You have that tape? Is that People's One? And this is People's One. This is the first exhibit I marked for you in this case 8 months ago. I stood before you back in January. I said to you that if you listen carefully to that tape, and you have the tape in the jury room, you put it in a tape recorder, and when you listen to it, listen carefully, because you can hear in the background the sound of someone being struck or slapped. And that's what the 911 operator heard. And she told you on the witness stand that she heard that. She heard the sound, the noise of someone being beaten, and she put that out on the radio. Recall that? She put it out on the radio that there was a woman being beaten at 360 North Rockingham. Now, they may say that this isn't important evidence. I say they're wrong. There's physical abuse here, wife beating here, spousal abuse, spousal battery going on. And this is an emergency situation. And Sharon Gilbert, the 911 operator, puts this call out, code 2 high. Get somebody to 360 North Rockingham fast. And they do. And they do. About 4 o'clock in the morning, Officer Edwards arrives at 360 North Rockingham. You call Officer Edwards, he and his partner. They drove up they drove up Ashford. They passed the Ashford gate. They stopped at Rockingham where he saw the call box. He got out of his patrol car and he pushed the button at the call box, and a voice responded on the other side. It was the voice of the maid at that time, Michelle Abderrahman. Officer Edwards identified himself told Michelle that he was there in response to a 911 call and that he needed to speak to the person that made the call. Michelle said, with sweatpants. And that woman came running from the bushes in the darkness toward the gate where the call box was, and she was yelling something. She was shouting something. Do you remember what she was shouting? Remember what the testimony was in this case? She was shouting, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." And she shouted this 4 or 5 times. So she arrived at that button and began pushing that button to get out of that gate, to get off that property, to get out of his house. And as Officer Edwards stood there on the street side, on the Rockingham side of that gate, looking at her on the opposite side of the gate, what did he see? He saw that she was covered with mud. She was panicked. As Officer Edwards put it, she was hysterical. And she's hitting that button, trying to open that gate to get out of there, and she's yelling to him, "He's going to kill me." And what did Officer Edwards say? What did he say? Who? Who's going to kill you? He didn't see anybody running behind her. Who? Who is going to kill you? And what did she say? OJ. OJ. OJ Simpson. The gate finally opened. She ran through the gate, and she ran to Officer Edwards, and she fell in his arms and collapsed. And she said, "He's going to kill me." And she just kept repeating it. Well, at that point, Officer Edwards shined his flashlight on her face. You remember the testimony? When he shined that flashlight on her face, he saw that her eye was starting to blacken. The right side of her forehead was swollen. There was an imprint, or some sort of a swollen mark on her right cheek. Did I say? And he also said she had a handprint. He saw a handprint on the left side of her neck, on the left side of her throat. A handprint. Someone had grabbed this woman, his wife, by the neck, hard enough to leave an imprint around her neck, an imprint in the shape of his hand. Let me say this to you. We submit to you that the hand that left that imprint 5 years ago is the same hand that cut that same throat, that same neck on June 12, 1994. It was the defendant. It was the defendant then, it's the defendant now. And at that point, Nicole Brown she said a series of things to Officer Edwards. And remember, keep in mind that she was hysterical, she was upset, and she was panicked. And I'm sure that she was in fear, because she must have been in fear, because she was riding through the night covered with mud in a bra and in her pajamas. And she said to Officer Edwards, she said something very important to Officer Edwards. She said, "You never do anything about him. You come out here, you've been out here 8 times, and you never do anything about him." That's what she told Officer Edwards that day. She said, "You've been out here 8 times. They want to tell you that the police conspired against OJ Simpson." Nicole says they'd been out there 8 times before and never did anything to him. I don't know. But let me ask you this. How many times does it take? If they'd been out there 8 times before that night, then that night was the 9th time. No one had ever done anything to him before. I don't know why that is. But what do you think? Do you think it's time to think that perhaps this time we ought to do something? 8 is enough. If 8 isn't enough, 9 is certainly enough. Nicole said it with her own mouth back then. "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." And sure enough, he has. Well, after she makes these spontaneous statements to Officer Edwards, after she complains that they've been out there 8 times before and they've never done anything to him, this man, the defendant, see, and we're seeing the defendant at home at this point, okay? We're seeing that private side of him, that private side that I told you I'd show you. He comes out of his house and he's wearing a bathrobe. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, nothing wrong with that. And he speaks to Officer Edwards. Now, when he speaks to Officer Edwards, does he ask him, "How's my wife?" No. Does he say, I hope I didn't hurt her too badly? No. What does he say? What does he do? He humiliates her. Remember what he said? He said, I don't want that woman in my bed anymore. I got 2 other women. I don't want that woman in my bed anymore. That was his response. And this was Nicole's wife. She'd been his wife 4 years. And you recall Officer Edwards' testimony that this defendant, he was angry. He was mad. He was fit to be tied. And he was yelling at Officer Edwards. And the defendant was on one side of the gate. He was on the Rockingham side, on his own property. Officer Edwards was on the other side of the gate. And there they are, speaking to each other on opposite sides of the gate. And the defendant is yelling these things to Officer Edwards about his wife, saying these kinds of things about his wife to Officer Edwards, who is a stranger. And Officer Edwards said to the defendant, your wife has been battered. She is injured. I'm going to have to arrest you. Well, that just set the defendant off again, just set him off. Let me tell you something, the fuse is burning. The fuse is burning, folks. The fuse is burning. And at some point, this fuse is going to run out. It's going to play out. It's going to get so short that and so close to the bomb that at some point this bomb is going to explode. And what does the defendant say when Officer Edwards says to him, I'm going to have to arrest you. I'm going to have to take you to jail. What does the defendant say? He says the same thing Nicole said, in a sense. He says to Officer Edwards, this is what the defendant said. You recall his testimony. Officer Edwards heard the defendant say, you've been up here 8 times before, and now you're going to arrest me for this? Now, let's just think about that for a moment. If nothing else, we now have the confirmation that we need. That is the confirmation of the fact that the police have been there 8 times before. But what is this part about? And now you're going to arrest me for this. What does that mean? What does that mean? Now you're going to arrest me for this, but you've been up here 8 times before.
I'm just wondering, maybe, just maybe. Now hear me out. I know this is crazy. But I wonder if in the murder trial of Nicole, if they would have had their litany of expert witnesses be the 8 officers that have been to her house prior. I wonder if those were their expert witnesses, if anything would be different. I don't know. Maybe that's just crazy thinking on my part.
And I don't know. I mean, this is the evidence in the case. You're going to have to decide what that means. You can interpret what he says. You don't have to just take it literally. You decide what that means. It means a couple of things. And after he said that, and after he complained to Officer Edwards about the fact that he's going to be arrested for beating his wife, he says to Officer Edwards, this is a family matter. It's a family matter and nothing more. Well,
This is just crazy, because they spent a year talking about none of this. Like, their closing statements do not match any of their witnesses or any of the evidence they put on, or any of the testimony. If EDTA was that important, I mean, I'm sure they have to mention it in their closing statement. Maybe Marcia already did, and you know, but if their closing statement should match all of the testimony. If none of that was important enough to be in the closing statement, why did they do that? Why didn't they show him as the abuser, and then just briefly, there was blood, blah, 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 blah. This is what the trial should have been. This is what the whole year should have been. This, right here.
wife beating is not just a family matter. Is it? I mean, is this something we ought to take seriously? That's one thing about spousal abuse. You know what happens. And it always happens behind closed doors. And you know what they say, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. And we don't know everything that went on behind the gates of this man's estate at Rockingham. But we do know this, that whatever it was, whatever went on there had gone on 8 times prior to this time. Right? We know that. But he says it's a family matter. He minimizes what has happened. He doesn't care about this woman. He doesn't care about what he did to her. Well, Officer Edwards gives him the star treatment. He tells him, hey, I'm going to take you to jail. Go back in the house and get dressed. Well, Officer Edwards did not insist on arresting him right then and there, and at that point, he let him go in the house alone to get dressed. Now, apparently that's what the defendant did, because a few minutes later, he came back out, yelling and complaining and moaning, complaining about being arrested and saying more derogatory things about his wife in front of this stranger. Well, in the meantime, Officer Edwards had sent for a second car, a second police vehicle, a transport vehicle, because he was going to transport Nicole to the station in one car, and they were going to arrest this man and take him to the station in another car. And as that second police car arrived, and as Officer Edwards turned his attention toward that second police car, that meant that he turned his attention away from the defendant. And what did the defendant do? You remember the testimony? You remember what happened? I know it's been a long time. What did he do? Jumped in the car and he ran. Remember that? He went out the other gate. In the Bentley, he ran. He drove away. He got away. He didn't get arrested. He avoided responsibility that day for having done what he did to Nicole. Responsibility is an important word. Isn't that one of the words we teach I know I teach my kids about responsibility. You know? You have to tell them. You have to let your kids know, hey, you do an act, you got to accept responsibility. Okay? You got to accept the consequences. Well, he didn't accept the consequences that day. He didn't accept responsibility. He jumped in that Bentley. He drove away. He snuck off. He avoided responsibility. He got away from the police. They tried to catch him. They couldn't. Well, we caught him this time. Well, after the defendant got away, Edwards asked Nicole to go down to Parker Center, to come from Rockingham all the way downtown to Parker Center so that he could have some professional photographs taken of her injuries. But she refused. Remember what she said? She said, no, I just want my children. I want to stay here with my children. I don't want to leave my children. And she was beaten, and she was bruised, and she was hurt. She still wanted to stay with her kids. She wanted to be with her kids. And Edwards said, well, will you do this for us? Will you just go down to West LA Station and let us photograph your injuries? It'll only take a few minutes. It seems as if she was more concerned about her kids than she was doing anything to the defendant. She didn't care about documenting her own injuries at that time. She just wanted to be with her kids. But Edwards took her to West LA Station and he took some Polaroid photographs of her. You remember those photographs? Back in February, I think it was. I think I marked those people's 4 and 5. I want you to go back for a moment with me, 8 months ago. Take a look at these injuries. And keep in mind that these are Polaroids, and they're 8 years old. But look at these injuries. And just look at what you can see, which isn't much at this point. See that small cut to the right side, where we are on the right side of her upper lip? Look at the swelling on her left cheek. Look at the scar, the scratch, the bruise up on the right side of her forehead. You see that? You've seen other pictures of her. You saw a picture of her when she was alive and smiling. Remember that picture? I'll have to find it for you tomorrow. But you look at that picture, the one you're looking at now. And you look at the one of her smiling. You look at those two pictures, I think it helps you discern just how badly bruised she was. Well, at some point he took her back home to be with her kids. The defendant, well, they didn't catch him that night. And the next day, Nicole spoke to Marcia. And the next day as well, the defendant spoke to Detective Farrell. Remember Detective Farrell, the detective investigating this case? He called Detective Farrell on the phone and apologized for the incident and expressed to Detective Farrell his dismay at the extent of her injuries. You remember that? He called Farrell and told him he didn't realize she'd been injured that much. He didn't realize the full extent of her injuries at the time. I don't know, you tell me. That's a Polaroid. This is People's 29. You... She doesn't quite look like that in any other photograph that you've seen in this case, does she? The fuse was burning, ladies and gentlemen. He had injured her, he had harmed her, and he had beaten her, and he did not fully realize the extent of his own anger, the extent of his own rage at that point. He had hurt her in ways that he himself, didn't fully comprehend at the time. And later on, he wrote her some letters. He was trying to get back on her good side. Now, you may see these as letters of apology. We say these are letters of manipulation. What is he really attempting to accomplish here? You'll have the original letters in the jury room. In the beginning, he expresses to her how sorry he is. Actually, I don't know. Does he say he's sorry? Does he say he was wrong? But he says he was wrong for hurting her and that there's no excuse for what he did. And then he goes on to write something I think is very, very important here. He writes that he's thinking and trying to realize how he got so crazy. He had such emotional feelings towards her that were as high as any he'd ever felt. And it must be because of those feelings that he reacted so emotionally. With all of that emotion running in him, he says he didn't react too well. It's just as I said a moment before, he doesn't fully realize, or he didn't in 1989, just how crazy he could get, how emotional he could get, how passionate he could get. Now, what set this whole thing off? What happened in 1989 that caused him to get to the point that he beat this woman up? Well, Ron Shipp testified about his conversation with Nicole. Now, if you reflect back for a moment on the defendant's statement to Edwards that he had two women, right? What did Shipp tell you about his conversation with Nicole? She found out about the other two women. She didn't want to have sex with him. She didn't want to be with him. That's what led to this whole thing in 1989. It's passion. It's emotion. And when that passion and that emotion gets out of control, and he was out of control in 1989, and when that fuse starts burning, ladies and gentlemen, and it starts getting shorter and shorter, it sets him off. He was set off that day in 1989. But you look at this letter, and you have this letter in the jury room, and you'll see that he can't always control the passion and anger and emotion himself. Something about this woman, she does something to this man that causes him to lose control. And he lost control. He lost control of her because in 1992 she moved out of his house. In January of 1992, as I recall, and the next month, I think it's February, I don't know. Maybe I should pull out the timeline for it, Jonathan. Because in 1992, in February, if I'm not mistaken, she filed for divorce. Well, you know, when a woman moves out of your house and files for divorce, I have learned, it means she doesn't want you anymore. It means that there's something wrong in the relationship.
I have learned.
And it means, I think, that perhaps if you are the other party to that marriage, then perhaps you should be seeking companionship elsewhere. Now, that's not what they did in this case. She left. She filed for divorce. And he couldn't take it. You heard from Catherine Bowe and her husband, Mr. Colby. Remember Mr. Colby? They lived at the corner on Gretna Green. In 1992, and I believe it was April 28th, around 11 p.m. at night. It's here on the chart. They looked out the window and they saw a figure, a man in the dark. In the darkness, they saw a man, and the man was out on the sidewalk, and he was looking around, and he was pacing a little bit up and down the sidewalk. He was pacing, walking up and down on the sidewalk. I don't know what it means when people pace. I do it a lot, but I don't know what this person was doing, pacing out there on the sidewalk. But they thought this was unusual at 11 o'clock at night. Was it a Sunday night? I think it was a Sunday night. And they watched this person. And they watched this person, this man, by the way, this man was about 6 feet, 6'2", 200 pounds, African American. They watched this man in the dark, in the night, pacing up and down the sidewalk. And then they saw that man walk down the sidewalk, up the driveway, and peer through the window of Nicole Brown's house on Gretna Green. You remember that testimony? He didn't handle that divorce, the filing of that divorce too well, did he? Now, they may say, oh, well, he looked through a window. Big deal. This is more than just looking through a window. This is stalking. When people come up to your window at 11 o'clock at night and they peek through it and they look through it and they watch you, there's something wrong here. There is something wrong here. This is obsessive conduct, ladies and gentlemen. This is obsessive conduct. This is stalking. And Nicole B saw this man. They saw him do that. They saw him walk back out on the sidewalk, and they became so concerned about him that they telephoned the police. They called the police. And after they called the police, they continued to watch through their window, to watch this man. They couldn't tell who the man was at that particular point in time, but after a few moments, they could. Who was that man? Him. Who was the defendant? OJ Simpson. Stalking Nicole.
I don't know what you mean,
April of
Key.
1992. Let me tell you something. By April of 1992, this woman knew that she was going to die.
What was I doing in
She told
Florida?
Edwards that he was going to kill her. She told him that back in 1989. And apparently she believed that. You heard testimony from a DA investigator in this case, my investigator from my office, Mike Stevens. And Mr. Stevens testified that in December of 1994, and with the permission of a judge, he said that he went to
let
the
me
bank
check my
and
email.
he drilled a hole in a safe deposit box. You recall that testimony? And it was in that safe deposit box that he found the letter that we showed you a moment ago. Remember that? The letter where the defendant says he doesn't know how he got so crazy. They found that letter. And they found 2 other letters from the defendant, from OJ Simpson, to Nicole, attempting to get back with her, attempting to convince her to take him back, attempting to convince her that things would be better the next time. They found those letters in that safe deposit box, and they found something else. They found a will. They found a will.
So I sent the email on 13 days ago.
It had been executed during 1990, which means she must have been about 30 years old.
Nothing back. So I'm going to just reply today and say
Do you know many people at the age of 30?
any
But you
update
find her
on
will,
this
his
request.
letters, and something else. Yeah.
Okay. I just sent another email. Hopefully they reply.
Photographs from back in 1989.
Remind me, and I'll keep doing it.
She called her sister Denise, and Denise came over, and she showed Denise the injuries this man inflicted on her, and she asked Denise to take pictures of those injuries. And she
We're
put those pictures in
contacting
that safe deposit
courtrooms
box,
to
along
get
with her will, along with her
trials.
letters.
We're doing Bundy right now.
She put those things there for a reason.
Not Al
And they're
Bundy.
just letters, and they're just pictures. But if you're going to have a safe deposit box, you think that the things that you put in that box are the things that you think are important.
It takes forever.
I don't know how you want to interpret
I
that conduct.
reached
You can
out to him,
interpret it
Bobby,
any way you
just
want,
like
but
I
I'm
reached
suggesting
out
that
to
you should
Florida.
interpret it this way. She is leaving you a roadmap to let you know who it is.
I gotta go take my daughter to work, guys. I'll be back very
She knew in
soon.
1989. She knew it. And she wants you to know it. She knew who was going to do it to her, but she didn't know when. But whenever that eventuality came, she wanted you to know who did it. Think about that. Just think about that. A will, photographs of her being beaten. Okay? You tell me. One of the photographs here that Denise took of her sister. Wait. One of the photographs that Denise took of her sister in 1989. People's 11.
Thank you.
And this photograph was taken, as I recall, on the 3rd or the 4th, I believe, of January, 3 or 4 days after the beating. And you can still see the injuries. Okay? This wasn't some little bruise that healed overnight or that went away the next morning. She left these for you. This is a roadmap. This is a sign. She wanted you to know who killed her when the time came. But it's 1992. And in 1992, he has already beaten up her Mercedes in a car. He has already beaten her up. Show the next one. And he is peeping through her window. Now look at the picture up on the album. Look at People's 29. That fuse is getting shorter, folks. It's burning. And at some point, he is going to explode. But in April of 92, as he peeks through the window and stalks her, he is jealous. He is jealous. He is consumed with jealousy. He has become obsessive. And we know he's consumed with jealousy because we know that back in 1989, after he did this tour, he spoke to Ron Shipp. Remember that? You remember Ron Shipp. You remember what they did to Ron Shipp on the witness stand? Ron Shipp testified that back in 89, he was a member of the LAPD and a friend to Nicole and to the defendant. And that after he beat her in 1989, she called him. She asked him to come and see her, and he did. You recall his testimony when he walked through the door, he saw Nicole and he saw these injuries and these bruises, and he was shocked. And he wanted to know who did this to her. She told him. He did it. And she talked to Ron Shipp about the defendant's conduct and their relationship. And as you recall, Ron Shipp at the time was teaching at the police academy. He was teaching a course on spousal abuse. And he showed Nicole a document. And this document listed some of the characteristics that are indicative of a man who beats women and are indicative of a woman who allows a man to beat her. And he showed it to Nicole, and he spoke with her, and she asked him to do her a favor, and that is to speak to OJ Simpson, her husband at the time, the defendant, to speak with him about his conduct, to speak with him about what he did to her. And Ron Shipp did that, and he showed this document to OJ Simpson, the defendant. The document, I believe, was called a profile, a battery's profile. It listed all these characteristics consistent with a person who beats his wife, and he showed them to OJ Simpson, and they had a discussion. And at first, this defendant tried to minimize what he had done to Nicole, and he tried to suggest that, hey, he wasn't a batterer. And Ron said, man, look at your wife. Look at the injuries. Of course you're a batterer. The defendant tried to minimize his conduct. And he showed those characteristics, that profile, to O.J. Simpson. And O.J. Simpson pointed one out. I mean, Shipp said, hey, do any of these fit you in your mind? Do any of these fit you? There's one category entitled pathologically jealous. Remember? And O.J. Simpson said, well, maybe. Maybe a little bit. Maybe I'm a little bit jealous. A little bit pathologically jealous. That's one of those things where you can't just be a little bit of. Either you are or you aren't. You know what I mean? You can't be somewhat jealous or partially jealous. You're either jealous or you're not jealous. And this defendant, he was jealous, and he was out of control, and he was consumed with passion for Nicole, and he was obsessive because in April of 1992, he is peeping through windows. He has already beaten her. He has beaten up her car, and he's done some other things. In 1988 and 1989, I told you already that the testimony from Denise Brown said he humiliated Nicole in public by grabbing her crotch in front of a bar full of strangers. And what else had he done? What else had he done? He'd thrown Nicole and Denise out of his house one night. Remember that night? That night that Denise said to him, OJ, you take Nicole for granted. And he blew up. Remember, he blew up and he said, hey, I do everything for her. And he became enraged back then, and he picked Nicole up, he threw her against the wall, and he threw her out the house, and he threw Denise out the house, and he threw all the clothes down the stairs and out the house too. Remember that testimony? This is the private side of him. This is the other side. This is the side of this man that you don't see in the commercial. He is out of control. He cannot handle it. And the fuse is burning.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our... Mr. Wooden, would you take that down for me, please? Thank you, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the evening. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. We'll stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and we'll resume with Mr. Darden's argument tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Have a pleasant evening, what's left of it. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. All right, we'll stand in recess. Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Blazier, people represented by Mr. Darden and Ms. Clark. Jury is not present. The record should reflect that this morning I had a chambers conference with counsel to discuss a questionnaire that will go to the jurors this afternoon, inquiring of them if they are desirous of extending the hours of deliberation into a later session during the evening hours, and whether or not they are desirous or willing to deliberate on Saturdays, with the understanding that any deliberations must be conducted here at the courthouse and in the jury deliberation room. We also discussed, counsel had no objection to the questionnaire proposed by the court. Also, the record should reflect that the court has directed counsel to be available on a 1 hour's call for the purposes of responding to questions by the jury and also requests for readback. And the court has indicated also that a longer time period to be available for the purposes of rendering a verdict will probably be in place, but we'll discuss that when the time comes. All right, anything else we need to discuss put on the record before we conclude with Mr. Darden's argument? Sure. All right, Deputy Trier. Yes, Mr. Scheck, good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to register for the record certain objections. One in particular to Ms. Clark's argument and get some determination from the court on this issue. At one point in her argument, she began making references to the defendants not performing tests on evidence and started making comments about experts for the defense who never appeared in court or testified and what they did or didn't do. In particular, the comment that concerned me the most was in reference to EDTA testing. It's one thing to say that Dr. Reeders didn't perform a test using the MSMS machine, because that certainly came out and was an impeachment in the testimony. But what concerned me was a reference, well, the defense had other experts and they didn't come in and give you test results or anything to that effect. And that seems to me improper because, first of all, it's commenting on a privileged area. I think that's 913. And secondly, I think we've already had some litigation on this issue where the court actually made a finding that the conduct of the prosecution in terms of trying to find out what, if anything, defense experts were doing in this area was, in the court's words, reprehensible. So it seems to me that comment on what other experts could have done with respect to their testing or did do or anything like that would be improper, although I have no objection to her making comments about Dr. Reeders. I thought that, and I'd like some kind of guidance from the court on that issue.
Ms. Clark?
I don't know what to say, Judge. I pointed out to the jury what's in the record. I pointed out the truth. And I think I was very specific about the people they called and they didn't call. What I pointed out, to the best of my recollection, is that they called Dr. Reeders to testify about someone else's tests. He performed none. He could have. I talked about Dr. Gerdes and I talked about Dr. Lee and I talked about Dr. Blake. This is all in the record. I don't recall. I did not refer to other experts that were unnamed or that did not come into the record. I talked about the ones that were in the record. And that's why they didn't perform any tests. I don't know what the complaint is.
All right, Mr. Scheck, do you want to, are there any case citations? Because primarily during the course of argument, prosecution counsel are entitled to comment upon the state of the evidence and the failure to call logical and material witnesses. And that's People versus Miller, 50 Cal 3rd at 954. The court's comments at 996.
No, it sounds like from her comments, I heard something different than if Ms. Clark doesn't believe she said that, or certainly isn't going to make that argument on a rebuttal, then I guess we don't have a quarrel. It seems to me, though, that just to make my point very, very clear, it's one thing to comment on Dr. Reeder's and what tests he did or did not perform under the circumstances. I distinctly heard her say the defense has other experts that could have done that test. And that, I think, is beyond the Miller case and beyond proper comment on the record, and it appears that Ms. Clark agrees. So perhaps
something based in the record, correct?
right. So it appears as though there's no disagreement here. But I'm very concerned because of.
Let's do this. Let's have our computer maven, Mr. Blazier, see if he can find the appropriate comment, and at the next recess, we'll take it up if you feel it's something that's appropriate.
Your Honor, I'll tell you what.
No, we just settled it.
Well, no, because in case, I don't know, we can't all remember what we say over the period of hours, but I will say this. Any reference to other experts would have been they could have brought someone in, not they had someone available. But assuming, what if that's the case? Don't do it? Wait. Okay.
Discussion's over.
All right.
All right, thank you. Deputy Trier, let's have the jurors, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. And let the record reflect that we've now been rejoined by all members of our jury panel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And Mr. Darden, are you prepared to continue on with your argument, sir?
Yes, I am, Your Honor. Thank you.
Right.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everybody,
Just briefly show that to counsel.
if you can, I hope everybody had a good sleep last night. It was a long day yesterday. And I thank you. Let me thank you in advance for hearing me again this morning. I don't expect to take up the entire morning. In fact, with any luck, I won't take up more than half of it. But we'll have to see. Well, you recall where we left off yesterday. I was telling you about this defendant's relationship, this man's relationship with Nicole Brown. And I told you that it was a simmering relationship. You know, it was a slow burn. It was a slow burn. And I described for you and discussed with you some of the testimony that you heard in this case, testimony you heard from witnesses about their relationship. And we talked about the 1985 incident involving the baseball bat and the Mercedes-Benz. We talked about the 1989 incident and the fact that the police have been there 8 times before. Both the defendant here and Nicole Brown both admitted that, so I guess it's true, right? We talked about the incident at the Red Onion when the defendant grabbed Nicole by the crotch and in front of a bar full of strangers and humiliated her. We talked about that. We talked about his admission to Ship, about his jealousy after the 1989 incident. We never talked about the testimony we heard from Denise Brown. Do you remember the testimony from Denise Brown when she talked about some of the really, really nasty things he would say to Nicole? As you may recall, Denise Brown, Nicole's sister, testified that during the time that she was pregnant, the defendant would call her names. Do you recall that testimony? He'd call her a fat pig. And he would call her a fat pig in front of other people. Now, I don't know what you should extract from that. I mean, have you ever heard of such a thing? I don't know. I would suggest, however, that that is some indication of how he really felt about her. You know, sometimes you get in a relationship, people get in a relationship, you know, and you have one half of the relationship who's dominant, and you have another half who's somewhat passive, and the dominant half dominates the other half. And what effect do you suppose this would have on Nicole? That is, being called a fat pig by her husband while she's pregnant. What effect would that have on her self-esteem? Because you're probably wondering, well, hey, If he did all of these things to her, if he said all of these things to her, why did she stay? There's this old song, and the words used to go I think it was the Dramatics. I can't really recall. But there was a couple of lines in the song where they said, the strong give up and move on, and the weak give up and stay. You know, if you badger a person long enough, if you beat them down long enough, if you wear them down long enough, pretty soon you strip them of their dignity, their self-esteem, and they are weak, and they are submissive, and they can't go. They can't stay. And you know how that is. Everybody knows how that is. We've all been in bad relationships before. You have friends. You see them in these bad relationships. Why? Why do they stay? Why do they stay? Usually they feel they don't have a choice. They don't know that they have a choice. They forgot that they had a choice. In their minds, they have no choice. She's a fat pig. But we talked about that yesterday, and we talked about justice, and we talked about what the real issue in this case was about, and I pointed the defendant out to you, and I told you he killed her, and you've heard the evidence in this case. He killed Ron Goldman. OJ Simpson's a murderer. That's what the evidence indicates. That is what the evidence indicates. That is what the evidence shows. It shows that he's not just a murderer, but he's a double murderer. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that I have to stand here and tell you this, because I'd rather be somewhere else. I'm sure you'd rather be somewhere else. Who wants to really have to confront and deal with these issues? But we have to, because we have a duty. Marcia and I have a duty, and you have a duty as well. Your duty is to look at all the evidence, to be fair, be conscientious, be objective. And your duty is to look at all the evidence, the totality of circumstances, everything. We don't want you to just look at one piece. Don't just look at the prosecution's case. Look at the entire case. Look at everything. Because when you do, hey, what can you say? Except he did it. And we've proven it. And we've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. And we talked about the safe deposit box yesterday, and we talked about the fact that Nicole knew that she was going to die, and we know that she knew that because she told the police that in 1989, and we know that she knew that because of what she saved for us, the roadmap she left for you in that safe deposit box, the letters, the photographs, the will. You recall that testimony. And as we went through the progression here, through the history of his abuse of Nicole, and by the way, not every incident here on this chart is an incident necessarily of abuse. But we wanted to lay out the history of their relationship as well. So that's why you see things like divorce and et cetera. So we're not trying to mislead you. But we thought it was important that you know how the relationship developed over the years. And this is an unusual relationship. You have to agree. There's something wrong here. Henry Lee said there was something wrong. There's something very wrong here. This is a slow-burning, simmering relationship, and it's just like I told you yesterday, the fuse is burning. The fuse is burning, folks, and it's getting shorter, and it's getting shorter. And it's just getting shorter. But this morning, I want to take things a step further, if I may, if you'll allow me to. Let's just cut right to the chase. Imagine a defendant in his Bronco. He is full of anger, and he is full of rage, and it's nighttime. And he's driving that Bronco, and he is full of jealousy. And the fuse continues to burn. And the focus of his anger is Nicole. For some reason, in his mind, she has done something that he can't ignore, something that has set him off. He's jealous, he's raging, he's out of control, and he's in that Bronco, and he is driving as fast as he can toward Nicole's house. And it's about 10 o'clock. He is out of control, folks. He is completely out of control, and when he gets to Nicole's place, he quickly parks the Bronco and he gets out. It's 10 o'clock. He's in his Bronco. He's at Nicole's house. It's nighttime. But we're not even talking about June 12. We're not talking about June 12, 1994. We're talking about October 25, 1993. All along, I've asked you to be open-minded about this man and who he is. And we have suggested to you, and I think we've proven to you, that he is not the person that you see on those TV commercials and at halftime in those football games. That is his public persona. We all have one. We all have one. We behave a certain way when we're in public, and we behave another way when we're at home. You know what they say, nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. And the fact that we may see you and you may see us doesn't really mean that you know us. or that you know me, or you know Miss Clark, or Mr. Cochran. You see us here in public. But what are we? What are we really? What are we really inside? What are we really at home? Well, we have a very, very, very nice example. Well, nice is a bad choice of words. We have a very, very poor example of who this man is, of who he is at home, of who he is in his private life. It's the private side, the other side of him. And I want you to listen to a tape of an emergency call. And you recall that I played that tape for you a long time ago, months ago, and you probably forgot about it, up until yesterday, I hope. But I'm going to ask you to listen to that tape in just a moment. Now, you know, some people say, well, how could OJ Simpson actually kill this woman and Ron Goldman when her kids are in the house? You know what I mean? They say, well, who would do something like that? Well, he would. Keep this in mind, if you will, if you think it's important. In 1989, when he beat her, you'll recall that when the police came and wanted to take her to Parker Center to have photographs of her injuries taken, you'll remember that she said, I don't want to go, I just want my kids, just take me back home to my kids are at home, I want to be with my kids. The night he beat her, his kids were in the house. And when you listen to this tape from October 25, 1993, after the first couple of minutes, you'll hear the defendant in the background yelling and screaming and raging. You'll hear that rage. And you'll hear Nicole on the telephone say, the kids are upstairs. The fact that the kids are in the house means nothing to this man, Mr. Fairlow, Mr. Wooden.
Which exhibit is this, Mr. Darden?
Which exhibit is this, Mr. Fairlow? 20?
Thank you.
I'm just someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green. He's back. Please. Okay, what does he look like? He's OJ Simpson. I think you know his record. He just had somebody over here. What is he doing there? He's just over here. Somebody over. Wait a minute, what kind of car is he in? He's in a white Bronco. But first of all, he broke the back door down to get in. Oh, wait a minute, what's your name? Nicole Simpson. Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever? Yeah. Okay, wait a minute, what's in the police? What is he doing? Is he threatening you? He's fucking going nuts. Okay, has he threatened you in any way or is he just harassing you? You're going to hear him in a minute. Okay, just stay on the line. I don't want to stay on the line. Just stay on the line so we can know what's going on till the police get here, okay? Okay, Nicole? Just a moment. Does he have any weapons? I don't know. Okay. He went home and hurried back. Okay, so upstairs sleeping. I don't want anything to happen. Okay, just a moment. Is he on drugs or anything? No. Okay. Just stay on the line, just in case he comes in. I need to hear what's going on, all right? You hear outside? Is he yelling? Yeah. Okay. Has he been drinking? No. Okay. One fellow unit, additional domestic violence, 325 South Gretna Greenway. The suspect has returned to the white Bronco, body for comment, incident 4221. Okay, Nicole, is he still outdoors or? He's in the backyard. He's in the backyard? Looking at my roommate about me and at me. Okay. Okay, what did he say? Oh, something about some guy I know and hookers and cheese and not your guys were with I started this shit before and it's all my fault. And now what am I going to do with clicking on this? And okay, oh my God, I started this before. Brother. Okay. Has he hit you today or no? No. Okay, you don't need any paramedic or anything? Okay, you just want him to leave my door. He closed the whole back door in. And then he left and he came back. And he came and he tried to knock my upstairs door down, but he pounded it, and then he screamed and hollered, and I tried to get him out of his bedroom because the kids were sleeping in there. And then he wanted the city phone number, and I gave him my phone book, or I clicked my phone book down to write down the phone number that he wanted, and then get my phone book and all my stuff in it. Okay, so basically you guys have just been arguing? Is he inside right now? Okay, just a moment. locked in a room or something? No, he can stay right in. I'm not going with the kids. But you think he's gonna get you? I don't know. Okay. Stay on the line. Don't hang it up, okay? What did he say? What did he say? He's still yelling at you? Just stay on the line, okay? 807 81, 807 325 South Credit Greenway, 325 South Credit Greenway, 807 81, code your line, 4221, are you 825? Is this something that you did? It always comes back. Is your roommate talking to him? No, I'm going to talk. Listen to him. I know. So do you have any weapons or anything with him right now? Okay. Where is he standing? In the back door, in the house. Could you just please, OJ, could you please? Is he leaving? No. Does he know you're on the phone with the police? No. Okay. Where are the kids at right now? Up in my room. Can they hear him yelling? I don't know. Okay, quiet. Is there someone up there with the kids? No.
I think we've heard enough of that. You'll have this tape in the jury room. I'm just a messenger, and I think you get the message, and you get the message straight out of his mouth. I mean, you hear this man in the background raging. He is raging about a picture of a man he saw at Nicole's house, a picture of a man she had apparently dated. How many months before? How many months did Nicole say? It was about 18 months or something like that. It's on the tape. And Nicole said on that tape as well that it always comes up. This man, that issue, always comes up. Apparently, this man and that issue is of great concern to the defendant, of so much concern that he apparently just can't get it out of his system. He can't put it behind him. He can't forget it. He can't forget it. And you hear him back there yelling and screaming at Nicole, and you hear the language, and you hear the things that he's saying about her, and you hear him in the background say, I don't give a shit anymore. That's what he said. An old relationship, a past boyfriend, a boyfriend she apparently had at a time after she moved away from his home and after she filed for divorce. A year and a half. And he still hadn't gotten over it. And it's October 25 in 1993. And Nicole doesn't know it at the time. She knows he's going to kill her at some point, but she doesn't know at the time that she only has 8 months to live. Now, we offer this tape to you, as I said before, so that you would know who you're dealing with. And because you have a right to see him, the private side of him. When you listen to the 911 call, as you take it back into the jury room, listen to the part where she tries to calm him, where she's on the phone and it sounds as if he's getting closer to her because you can hear his voice more clearly and his voice is raised even higher than before. And she tries to calm him. And as she's trying to calm him, she tries to calm him by using a calm voice of her own. You get what I'm saying? I mean, she says, OJ, OJ. Now, 3 minutes before, she was in tears on the phone calling the 911 operator, but when he comes near, he's enraged. She is trying to calm him down with a calm voice. What does that mean? I mean, is that helpful to you at all? Let me suggest to you that what that means is that she's been there before. She apparently feels as if she has a way, some tactic or some approach that might help calm him down. It's Nicole's approach to her problem when the defendant becomes enraged, a calm voice. And she is scared, and you know she's scared. You can hear the fear. You can hear the terror in her voice when she calls the 911 operator. But when he gets close and when she gets to the point where she has to calm him down, she's the calm one. She's the one who is in jeopardy. But she's the one with the calm voice. 1993 was the same year that the defendant talked to Cato Kalin. Remember, Cato Kalin was living at Gretna Green with Nicole. He was living in the back in the guest house. And he talked to Cato just before Nicole moved to Bundy. Remember that conversation? You recall that testimony? This is an example of this man's control, of the control he had over Nicole, the control he exercised over her. Cato was living with her. Cato's going to be paying rent to her, to Nicole. This is money. This is income. Okay? She's divorced from this man. She is not his wife. She is not his wife. She has not been his wife since 1992. Okay? Cato lives there. She has no relationship, no intimate relationship with Cato. She has a right to have him live there in the guest house if she wants. And as she moves to Bundy, if she wants Cato to rent a room, she has that right. I mean, this is 1993. He has no right to interfere with that, but he wants to exercise control over her. He's about control. This is all about control, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about control. The beating, the humiliation, all of that. That's how you control people. You beat them down. They lose their self-esteem. You humiliate them, and pretty soon, they're like puppies. He talked to Cato, and he said to Cato that it wouldn't be a good idea if he moved to Bundy. It wouldn't be right. Remember? Well, you know, you meet people and you get involved in relationships, and he continued his relationship with Nicole, and you have to take people at face value and take them how they, take it how it comes to you. You know what I'm saying? If he wanted to be with Nicole, then he should be with Nicole, the way she is. And if the way she is that she needs a tenant to pay rent, to make it, or whatever, that's her thing. He should just accept that, but he doesn't. He talks to Cato, and what does he do? He bribes him. He bribes him away from her. Cato was going to be paying $450 to $500 rent at Bundy. He bribes Cato away, and what does he do? How does he do it? Cato, come live with me over at Rockingham. We got the jacuzzi, the pool, your stage, the tennis court. You got your own room. And what's it going to cost you? What's it going to cost Cato? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Scratch. It's free. He's bribed Cato away from her, and she is upset about it. You heard the testimony. Nicole talked to Cato, and she begged him not to do as the defendant asked. She told Cato that he was being manipulated. This is control. But Cato told you from the witness stand that the deal was too sweet. It was a freebie, free stuff, free rent and board, free room and board. How could he turn it down? He turned his back on Nicole, and Nicole was angry about that. Nicole named her dog Cato. Think about that. Nicole named her dog Cato. I'm not suggesting to you that this man was angry and depressed and consumed with jealousy each and every moment of the day or each day that he was with Nicole. I'm not saying that. I'm sure that there were periods of calm. I'm sure that there were periods when they had a good time. I'm sure there were times and periods when things worked out great for both of them. But always beneath the surface looms this jealousy and this anger and this passion in that rage, the rage you just heard on that tape. And you know, if you're in Nicole's position and you know all about this, and you know that, hey, you know, there's certain things that can set him off, that can set that fuse to burning, that can make that fuse shorter and shorter, then you're going to tread lightly, right? You're going to try and do everything you can not to upset him. And that's control. They went back and forth in their relationship. They'd make up, then they'd break up. They'd try to get together. They had kids. That sounds natural, right? I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with that per se. And as I understand the testimonies, I recall that they were together again in the spring of 1994. Despite all of that, despite everything that had happened up until this point, in 1994, she moves in January to Bundy, and in the spring she begins dating the defendant again. And Cato Kalin told you from the witness stand that they had some kind of commitment, either to each other or she to him. I'm not sure of all the details, but you heard the testimony. And if my memory fails me, then, you know, rely on the testimony in case I'm incorrect. But they had some kind of agreement or commitment that she would date only him or wouldn't date anybody else before he left to go to New York for football season. She was supposed to date only him until August. And Cato said that was a commitment, that they had that commitment. Well, somebody broke the commitment apparently. And May 19, as I recall, was Nicole's birthday. And for her birthday, he gave her an expensive bracelet. And on her birthday as well, as I recall, she was sick with pneumonia. Was that the testimony? She was sick. And I think someone said, and it may have been Miss Arnell Simpson, that the defendant had brought her soup, taken soup over to her on her birthday because she was sick, or maybe the day after her birthday, but sometime around that time period. But for some reason, Nicole broke off their relationship. She broke off the relationship. For some reason, on May 22nd or thereabout, Nicole got the courage, strength to break this relationship. Now, you have to assume that if someone moves out of your house, that's an attempt to break off a relationship. And you would think that he would get the point. When she filed for divorce, you would think that he would get the point. Then when the divorce is final, you would think that he would get the point. But they go back and forth for whatever reason. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. I'm sure to some extent it's Nicole's fault also. If we can fault anybody for this. But she returned that bracelet on or about May 22, 1994. She couldn't be bought. She couldn't be controlled anymore. She had had enough. And when you look at the things that transpire after May 22, 1994, you get the sense, don't you, that he finally got the message? It's over. It's over. She can't be bought. You can give me this expensive gift if you want to. That's fine. But I'm not staying in this relationship. Take it back. And she gave it back to him. And the defense would like you to think that this wasn't... but there's no big deal to this breakup, that nobody was upset, that he wasn't upset about it. But was he? Christian Reichart testified from the witness stand for the defense, and he told you that the defendant had been depressed during the weeks leading up to the murder. He had been depressed because of his failing relationship with Nicole. He was depressed because she couldn't make up her mind as to whether or not she wanted to stay in the relationship. You recall that testimony? He was depressed about that. But it seems to me that perhaps his depression turned to anger. Do you have the IRS letter? In the days that followed, and we don't know everything that happened between them in the days that followed, but we know that at some point there was a letter that he wrote to her. And we assume that he wrote it because his signature's on the bottom, and this letter has been marked as evidence, and Mr. Fairlow will get the exhibit number. The actual letter has been marked as evidence. And the letter was dated June 6th. And it's signed OJ Simpson. And in the letter, now remember, there are no hard feelings here if you believe the defense case. And this letter begins, on the advice of legal counsel, and because of the change in our circumstances, I'm compelled to put you on written notice that you do not have my permission to use my address at Rockingham as your residence or mailing address for any purpose, including but not limited to information and tax returns filed with any taxing entity. Well, what is this? What does this letter mean? How is this letter helpful to you? How many times do we break up with someone and then send them a letter a few days later or 2 weeks later in legalese? And what are the changes in their circumstances that he's referring to? The change in their circumstances is that she has decided that she does not want to be with him anymore. And now he's out to hurt her. He's going to hurt her. This letter is People's 25, Your Honor. Did Nicole have some kind of tax problem? Looks like it. In the last paragraph, he says, I cannot take part in any course of action by you that might be misleading to the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board. What is he suggesting to her? How should she receive this letter? And look at the carbon copy. Mr. Cochran asked someone on the witness stand if they knew that Marvin Goodfriend was his accountant, as I recall. We've heard that Leroy Taft is his lawyer. A carbon copy to his lawyer and his accountant. What's going on here? This is supposed to be an amiable breakup? No hard feelings? This is control. This is a subtle threat. If you disagree with me, fine. If the defense disagrees with me, that's fine as well. But let me tell you something. When the defense began the defense case, well, not the defense case, but when Mr. Cochran did his opening statement, he told you about a witness he intended to call. And this witness seemed to be a pretty important witness, and would seem to be given the evidence that you've heard in this case. He told you about a woman named Dr. Lenore Walker. And he said to you at page 11783 that there's an expert in the U.S. whose name is Dr. Lenore Walker, and that she is, by all accounts, the #1 expert in America on the field of domestic violence. And he said that she has been called by some the mother of the battered women syndrome. He went on to tell you that she was a psychologist. And she interviewed and tested the defendant. The things that I'm saying to you and discussing with you today, the testimony that you heard from the witness stand about the domestic violence, the beating, abuse, the intimidation, the threats, the stalking. Did they call one witness to rebut any of that testimony? They called 58 witnesses. How many came to address the 1989 incident, the October 23, 1993 incident that you heard on the tape? Or why didn't they call Dr. Walker? Who could have put this all in perspective for you if what the witnesses said in this case aren't true? I mean, it wasn't true. Dr. Walker could have interpreted this letter for you. But they didn't call Dr. Walker. They wouldn't call Dr. Walker. They better not have called Dr. Walker. And Dr. Walker never stepped foot into this courtroom while you were here in the jury box. They are a group of very, very fine lawyers. They called some of the most expensive experts money could buy. But we didn't see Dr. Walker. We didn't see her explain to you why this letter is insignificant, if that's the defense position, or why this cycle of violence that led up to Nicole's murder doesn't help to establish motive from a practical sense. And there was something that he said to you on page 11793, and I want to take a moment and show it to Mr. Cochran before I read it, if I can.
Yo, it's cold out there. God, it's really freaking cold outside.
Read to you something Mr. Cochran told you he would present to you in this case. And at page 11793, he said to you,
The judge said that they were allowed to have 2 lawyers per side, or were allowed to close.
I'm going to tell you about the facts. And he says, so you will hear from Dr. Walker, and you will hear about the battery of tests, and I think you will find that she will say that in looking at OJ Simpson, she testified, that in looking at OJ Simpson, and interviewing him, and looking at him, at this point, she finds no evidence of antisocial personality disorder. And I think you will find that becomes very important in this case. So where is Dr. Walker to come here to testify, to take the witness stand, to sit in a blue chair and tell you that none of this is important, that everything I've told you for the last 3 hours is insignificant and unimportant? Where is she to tell you that he does not suffer from some antisocial personality disorder? She ain't here. And had she come here and expressed an opinion that this was unimportant, we could have cross-examined her. But they can't touch this.
Different lawyers argued different parts of the whole trial. Marcia doesn't know everything about everything. They all had their own parts. So I think it makes sense a bit, I guess. Thank God no one's talking about, You know, the real technical stuff. We don't have Neufeld up here or anybody.
They can't touch this. This is important evidence. You have to consider it when you consider motive, when you consider the issue of identity, the identity of this man as the killer of these two people. You have to consider this on the issue of premeditation. This is important evidence. As the days proceeded on, we know that he hired an interior decorator. As I recall the testimony, Paula Barbieri, his new girlfriend, you know, the one that he was so happy with. It's odd, but on the one hand, they say he was happy with Paula Barbieri. On the other hand, Cato says that he told him, the defendant told Cato that he, the defendant, didn't know if Paula was the one. I don't know. But let me tell you something about this letter, just to go back, and this whole interior decorator situation. The fuse is burning, and it is getting short. Okay, it's getting short. He is trying to erase her presence, for instance, from his home. Okay, this is how short the fuse is getting. He's trying to erase her presence from his home. He has hired an interior decorator to redecorate the bedroom, the master bedroom, was it? And the bathroom, they're going to rip out the plumbing. The places she had been, they are going to change. They are going to erase her presence from the house. He is going to erase her presence from the house, or at least he's going to try. He is angry and he is upset. He has been rejected, and he doesn't like that rejection. And
I don't know, because
he's trying to get beyond it.
this stuff they didn't talk about in the trial. They barely spoke about any of this stuff in the whole trial at all.
What does he do? And what does he do?
I wish they did. It would have been a better trial.
And what does he do? They do work awfully hard, so I can't get upset at them. Page 19.
I believe it is. Mr. Fairley, what evidence exhibit is this? Let me know. Mr. Darden.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So what does he do? He gets rid of her wedding photo, their wedding picture, puts it underneath the bed. He is trying to get beyond this, but he can't get beyond this because the fuse is burning, because he is upset and angry that the relationship was terminated by her. I mean, you look at that picture, you look at them. After you're divorced and after you break up with someone, you don't usually keep the pictures out, right? I mean, you don't. But do you throw them underneath the bed? You put them in a box, or you get rid of them altogether? That's what you do. But in this case, in his case, he is trying to get over her, but he can't. He can't get over her. He can't get beyond this. On the one hand, he throws his picture underneath the bed. And on the one hand, she is out of sight, and he hopes out of mind. But on the other hand, she's just beneath the bed, where he has access to it, where he can grab it, and where he can look at it. He is beginning to obsess with her. He is becoming obsessive with her, and he is trying to replace her at the same time with Paula. His relationship with Paula supposedly blooms again all of a sudden at about this time, right after she breaks up with him. If she broke up with him on May 22nd, and by June the 6th or whatever, he and Paula are back together, and now they're ripping the plumbing out of the house. You know, people need space. You need time when you're in a relationship, especially one that lasted 17 years. He is trying to replace Nicole with Paula, and he is trying to find some sense of control. But the fuse is burning. And I just wish Dr. Walker had been here to help explain this to you. I'm sure she could have done a better job of it than I have so far. And so we move on. The days pass, and that photo was People's 536, the wedding photo. And the days pass, and we begin to approach June 12th, the day of the recital. You recall that the defendant had conversations with Cato Kalin that day, and he talked about Nicole, he talked about her dress, He talked about how short it was. He talked about the relationship being over. It didn't appear, and you tell me maybe you disagree, that he and Caitlin had that kind of relationship, the kind of relationship where he would vent his frustrations regarding Nicole to Cato. I don't know. You saw Cato, and I don't know why anybody wanted to discuss the personal problems with Cato Caitlin, but he did. And he talked about Nicole a couple of times that day to Cato Caitlin. And Marcia cross-examined Cato Caitlin and directly examined Cato Caitlin, and they talked about those conversations. And as Marcia mentioned yesterday, Cato had a bias, and he was biased in favor of the defendant. He minimized things. That's not to say that he just outright lied about things, but he minimized things. I think he minimized the tone of the defendant's voice when he talked about Nicole. I think he minimized just how upset the defendant was when he talked about Nicole. But hey, whatever. The defendant supposedly seen Paula. It's the day of the recital. And what happened that day? Well, the fuse got shorter. I'll tell you why. Paula's new girlfriend wanted to go to the recital. The recital where Sydney was going to be performing over at the school. And they had an argument about that, for lack of a better term. They had a disagreement about that. She wanted to go. He didn't want her to go. He wanted to go alone. He told Cato that they had a disagreement about that, and she was upset. Well, why is that important? It's important because she left. It's important because Paula left. She left Rockingham. She left Los Angeles. But apparently he didn't know that. Apparently they had their disagreement about the recital. Paula got mad. Paula left town. It's pretty apparent that he didn't know that. I can't tell you how bad that disagreement was or if there were raised voices or whatever. We don't have any of that in the testimony or any evidence in this case. But we do know that Paula left and that he didn't know where Paula had gone. And the fuse is getting shorter. Because what happened that day is this. Paula, as a woman, I guess she's asserting her womanhood. She's supposed to be his woman now. She wants to go to the recital. Why not? He won't let her. Why won't he let her? Because he still has hope for Nicole. He still has some hope. He still has some hope. He doesn't want Paula to go to the recital. He won't let Paula go to the recital. And Paula realizes why. And she packs up and she leaves. That afternoon, the defendant called Nicole. We'll get the right photo board. That afternoon, he called Nicole's house. He still got hope. He's got hope that, she's always come back, right? Each and every time that they've gone back and forth many, many times. They've always gotten back together. She's always come back. But she isn't coming back this time. But he still has hope. He's put in a catch-22 situation of sorts that day when he and Paula talk about her going to the recital. He has to make a choice that day. He's either going to go to the recital where Nicole is, alone, hope in hand, or he's going to choose Paula. It's either Nicole or Paula. If he takes Paula to the recital, take her out in public, take her around Nicole, take her around the Brown family, he's made a choice now, okay? It's public. Everybody knows he has made a choice. He is now with Paula. But he couldn't make that choice because he still had hope, and he still had hope for Nicole. And so he called Nicole on June 12th. He called her and talked to her at 2:18 in the afternoon. It was a 4-minute phone call. And something happened during that phone call. But let me tell you what else. That after he finished that 4-minute phone call with Nicole, he tried to call Paula. As soon as he hung up with Nicole, he tried to call Paula in the 305 area code, Florida, right here. The phone call it began at 2:18, it lasted 4 minutes. At 2:22, he's calling Florida. Something happened. I don't know what happened. Something happened. Whatever happened during that phone call, he had a need to talk to Paula thereafter or immediately thereafter. But he's calling Florida looking for Paula. But we know from the testimony and the evidence in this case already that Paula's in Las Vegas in a hotel room being paid for by Michael Bolton. He doesn't know where she is. Sounds like she got upset and stormed off and went about her business. But he can't find Paula. He's having a problem with Nicole. He's about to lose all the women, both the women in his life. And the fuse is getting shorter, folks. It's getting shorter. And the frustration is building. Okay? And the anger is building. And something has triggered his anger, because in all of this, this is a tension. This entire relationship over a 10-year period is filled with tension because of the doors being kicked in and the punches and the slaps and the intimidation and the control and all of that. I mean, this is a very, very tense relationship, and things are about to explode because he has that conversation with her. He tries to call Paula. He can't find Paula, and by the time he gets to that recital that afternoon, around 5 o'clock, he is fit to be tied. He is angry. You heard the testimony of Candace Garvey, Steve Garvey's wife. She was also at the recital. She knows the defendant. She's known him for a long time. He came into the recital. She and Steve spoke to him. They said, hello, how are you? How are you doing? And what was her testimony? What was his response? There was no response immediately. You recall the testimony. He had a blank stare on his face. He was distracted. She told you that it was as if he looked right through her, as if he didn't recognize that she was there. And she told you that his demeanor that afternoon in the recital frightened her. And she told you that he was angry. And Denise Brown testified as well about that recital. And they told you that he was angry and he didn't look to be or act like the OJ Simpson they had come to know. Candace Garvey said that he was distant, that his anger was simmering, that he had this look of simmering anger. He was in a slow burn, and the fuse was getting shorter. Something set him off, and perhaps what set him off was this 4-minute phone call at 2 in the afternoon. Perhaps his inability to find Paula that afternoon set him off. And now the fuse is really burning. Now the fuse is getting shorter, and there's going to be an explosion, folks. There's going to be an explosion. He arrives at the recital. He sees Candace Garvey, literally ignores her. He's angry. He takes a seat in the auditorium. He sees the Brown family seated in the auditorium. Okay. Judith Brown and Lou Brown, Nicole's parents, and her sisters. Nicole is seated with them or near them. He goes over to the Brown family and he greets everybody in the family, every one of them. He greets everybody but Nicole. He doesn't address Nicole. This is a family event, right? His daughter, Nicole's daughter, at the recital dancing, but he doesn't address her because he is angry. He is consumed with anger, and the fuse is getting shorter. He doesn't appear like the OJ that they knew, the man that they knew. Candace Garvey is frightened by his demeanor. What does he do? He takes a seat behind the Brown family. And there are no seats near the Brown family, so nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the fact that he takes a seat behind the Brown family. But as Denise Brown told you on the witness stand, after a few minutes, he just abruptly got up and moved. He got up, took a chair, and in this dark auditorium, because the program was going on, he takes that chair and he moves into the corner and he sits in the corner of the auditorium. Denise Brown told you that she could not understand. She did not understand why he did that. She told you on the witness stand that she didn't say anything to offend him. Nobody said anything to offend him. Why is he so angry? Who is he angry at? Well, common sense will tell us that he's angry at Nicole. Why? Because he didn't address her, but for another reason as well. As he sits there in the corner in the dark, he isn't watching the program on the stage. He's watching Nicole. Candace Garvey told you this, Denise Brown told you this as well, that whenever they looked over at the defendant, that he was not looking at the stage or the program on the stage or the kids dancing up on the stage. They told you that every time they looked over in that dark corner at the defendant, he was staring at Nicole. He was staring at Nicole, and that simmering anger that he had, folks, he was about to lose control. The fuse is getting shorter, and there's about to be an explosion. He is about to lose control. And he's about to lose control like he did on those earlier occasions. And sure, he didn't kill her on those earlier occasions in October 93 or in 1989. But that was then. And back then, the fuse was a lot longer. But now, the fuse is way short. It's awfully short. And when the program was over, clearly he knew that the relationship was over. In the past, he had done things to Nicole, and she had come back. But not only that, the Brown family. He still had the Brown family. But when you consider the evidence in this case, you see that after the recital, Nicole and the kids and the Brown family went to the Mezzaluna for dinner. They didn't invite him to go. He has been rejected, completely rejected. He has been rejected in public, and this is how these things work. This is how these things work. You may sit here and think, oh, well, this isn't such a big deal. Well, sure. Perhaps in your lives and in your relationship, this wouldn't be such a big deal. But you have to put it in the context of the relationship that they've had. This is a big deal. It is a big deal to him. And he is rejected in public. They go off to dinner. He's left to go off to dinner with Kato Kalin. He isn't used to rejection, by the way. He's a celebrity. We talked about that earlier. Celebrities get, you get the best tables. You always get everything you want. You get what you want. There are no rules for celebrities. But on June 12th, he isn't getting what he wants. And so he goes home. And the fuse is getting shorter. And it's getting shorter. And he talks to Kato Kalin, and he complains about the dress she wore. And the fuse is getting shorter. Christian Reichardt was called by the defense, and he testified that he spoke to the defendant at 9 o'clock that night. And then when he spoke to the defendant, that the defendant was jovial, happier than he'd been in weeks. He went from simmering anger at the recital to jovial at 9 p.m. that night.
Zach, if you're still here, thank you.
It's because the defendant has developed a plan. He has come up with a plan to rid himself of the problem that has plagued him for 17 years. And he talks to Reichardt. He called Reichardt, as a matter of fact, if you believe that testimony. So many weird things going on that evening. He wants $5 for the sky cap. Cato gives him a 20. He's driving the Bentley to McDonald's. He's calling Christian Reichardt at 9 o'clock, and he tells Reichardt that he's packing right then. 9 o'clock, he's packing to go to the airport. That was the testimony from Reichardt. But then you have these other witnesses come in, Miss OJ Simpson and Gigi, the maid. They come in and they tell you that he always packs at the very, very last minute. He rushes around the house, and how everybody knows that he does that. What is going on here? Why is he packing now? Why is he doing these things with Kato Kalin? Why is he jovial all of a sudden, if you believe Christian Reichardt? It's because he has a plan and he knows what he is going to do. He has had enough. The public rejection that day is enough. Folks, let me tell you, the fuse is so short at this point that he is about to explode. The next thing we know, he's in that Bronco. He is in the Bronco at 10 o'clock or earlier. We don't know when exactly he got into that Bronco, but we know that at 10 o'clock he's into that Bronco, and he is driving in that Bronco. And why wouldn't he be? How do we know that? We know that, as Ms. Clark said, because he keeps the phone in the Bronco, and he is panicked, and he is out of control, and he needs someone or something to help calm him. And so what does he do? He calls Paula. But he calls Paula in two places. He calls Paula at a 310 area code in L.A., and she isn't there. And then he turns around and he calls Paula at a 305 area code, and she ain't there either. Paula Barbieri probably could have stopped this whole thing that night if she had been there to receive his phone call. But now Paula's gone, Nicole is gone, and whose fault is all of this? It isn't his fault. It isn't the defendant's fault. It's Nicole's fault. It's Nicole's fault. And that's, even in 1989 when he beat her. When he came out of the house, he blamed her. Remember when he spoke to Edwards? He didn't want her in the house anymore. He had two other women. Then we come to find out that she found out that he had been with two women, and she was upset about that and wouldn't sleep with him. But he took it out on her. When you listen to the October 25, 1993 911 tape, he's blaming her because she had a relationship with a man a year and a half before, after she had moved out, after she had filed for divorce, when she was literally a single woman out there on her own. He always blamed her. Everything was her fault. And his breakup, his problems with Paula, the fact that he lost Paula was her fault. It was her fault because she went back and forth in terms of their relationship, and the fuse was short, and the fuse is about to explode. You're going to take a 10:30 break, Your Honor? Yes. And the bomb will explode when we come back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our mid-morning break at this time. Remember, all my admonitions to you. We'll stand in recess for 15 minutes. Matter, all parties are again present. All right, Deputy Trier, let's have the jurors, please. And let the record reflect that now we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. And Mr. Darden, you may continue with your argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're getting there. I've talked much longer than I'd ever expected. And I don't apologize for that because I think it's necessary that we have this discussion.
Keep your voice up just a little so I can hear, because you're
Okay.
turned away. Thank you.
So I apologize.
We get
Sense I get.
Barry Scheck in this video. We are an hour and 15 minutes in. It's 2 hours and 3 minutes long, and we are definitely playing at, a little bit faster. So if we get to Scheck in this video, then that means they rest, or they're going to come back again. But we won't see him in this video, but maybe tomorrow.
Yes, but I have a duty, and you have a duty, and I'm not going to have much of an opportunity later, I think, to talk to you. And so I wanted to share these things with you because I think they're important and because I think they may help guide you in your deliberations. But when we left off, we were talking about the fuse, how short the fuse was getting, and how the defendant was on his way to Bundy in that white Bronco, the same Bronco he drove that night in October of 1993. And so he's on his way, and he is panicked, and he is out of control, and he's calling Paula, and he can't find Paula. He calls her in L.A., he calls her in Florida. She's nowhere to be found. He can't find her. He has lost her. And he has lost Nicole. And whose fault is this? It's Nicole's fault. He made a choice that day. He chose Nicole over Paula, and he lost them both. And so he arrives at Bundy, and Ms. Clark discussed with you yesterday the details of the murder, of both murders. And I don't want to, repeat all that she said. But one of the things that she said that I just want to elaborate on a little bit is his choice, his weapon choice, the use of a knife. This is a rage killing, and it is upfront, and it is personal. And that is why you see all the brutality that you see. Common sense tells us that. I mean, we know that just from life experience and from living in L.A., we know what kind of killing this is. This is a rage killing. And he's using a knife because he is there to settle a personal score, a personal vendetta that he has. He stabs this woman in the neck. And he's right there. I mean, it's one-on-one. And the rage that he has, the anger, the hate that he has for her that night, at that time, it's like it flows out of him and into the knife, and from the knife into her. Into her. And he kills Goldman, and he kills her in this rage. And let me make it clear to you. He's enraged, but he has made a conscious decision, a premeditated decision, a deliberate decision to go there and do what he is about to do to this woman. Otherwise, why would he take a big knife with him, right? He killed her that way because he wanted to make a statement. He wanted to teach her a lesson. He wanted to let her know. He wanted her to be there face to face to know just who it was who was doing this to her. With each thrust of that knife into her body and into Ron's body, there is a release, a small release. It's like a tiny time capsule, like contact. There is a release, a gradual release of that anger and that rage. And he stabs and he cuts and he slices until that rage is gone and until these people are dead. And after that rage is gone, he's better. One of the most remarkable things about this case is that after this man, after he did this to these two people, he didn't run away. He didn't jog away. Apparently, he didn't limp away. You heard Agent Bonziak's testimony. He just walked away. He had released all of that rage and that anger during this homicidal fit he was having as he killed these two people. And I'm just a messenger. I hate to be the one to stand here and tell you about these things, but this is a murder case. And this is what he did. All these things we talked about, these are the things that he did. This is how he lived. This is his life. Okay. And so I think we've come full circle at this point. We've shown you that he had the opportunity to kill. We've shown you that had the motive, that he had a motive to kill. We've shown you in this trial that he was physically capable of killing. We've shown you that he had a reason to kill. We've shown you that he would have killed, could have killed, and did kill these two people. He's a murderer. He was also one hell of a great football player. But he's still a murderer. And so we've come full circle. There was Ron, and there was Nicole. And Ron, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nicole, she was in the wrong place for a long time. And there's this common factor, this common element between the two of them. The one thing they had in common was this man, this defendant. And so we began with them, two very much alive, vibrant human beings. We went through 1989 and 1985, through the beating he inflicted on her. And we went from that in 85 into 1989. And we came to this point on June 12 at Bundy. And so we've come full circle. And the only common element in all of this, and the only direction in which all the evidence points, is to OJ Simpson. And I told you when this began that I had the hardest job. Nobody wants to do anything to this man. We don't. There's nothing personal about this. But the law is the law. And it applies to us. It applies to you. It has to apply to him. He made a promise a long time ago. He promised to love and to cherish and to keep her. He married her, and he made those promises to her. He promised to be her husband, and he was. And let me say to you that every wife killer or ex-wife killer starts off as a loving husband. And in every household where there's a marriage between a man and a woman, there's a picture just like that picture right there. There's a picture just like that on every mantle, on every home where the husband killed the wife. What he did that night on June 12th, the night of June 12th, to these two people, this brutality, is a violation of every law, high and low, that we can possibly think of. And I suppose there's some people that say, hey, we should cut him some slack. And, this were a case of, a theft or embezzlement or something like that, you can always make restitution. But this is a very, very serious charge. Two people are dead. And let me say that what you do in this case is entirely up to you. I mean, you're the jury. When I sit down, I sit down. I'm done. I've completed my duty. I've done what the law requires me to do. I've lived up to the oath, my oath, as a member of the district attorney's office. And we hope we presented the best evidence we could. And if we didn't present the best evidence we could, don't hold that against us. I just want you to, when the time comes to go into the jury room, I just want you to, somebody just say, let's calm down, let's elect a foreperson, let's read the law, let's take a minute, and let's just look at the evidence. I'd just like you to use your common sense when you do. When you do that, you use your common sense, when you try to be objective, when you remove all the emotion out of this case, when you remove all of the sympathy and passion, and when you just look at the facts, the evidence as best you can, you come up with the right decision. The world's watching. Everybody wants to know what you're going to do. Marcia Clark and I know you're going to do the right thing under the law. And whatever you do, the decision is yours. And I'm glad that it's not mine. Let me turn my attention and hopefully yours to the defense case, if I can talk about that a little while.
Nope. You can talk about that tomorrow, because we've already spent enough time today on you. He did good. He did a good job today. But so we're we're going to flip over to video 479 tomorrow. Out of 493. Not all these videos are 2 hours long though. But we are on September 27th right now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 more videos from September 27th. September 27th. And then September 28th is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 videos. And then the 29th, 1, 2, 3, 4 videos. So we have 3 more days, and then October 3rd is the verdict. So we're getting there. We are days away, guys. Thank you so much for coming out today. I appreciate it. We'll be back again tomorrow. Come out tonight. Come out tonight at 8 p.m. We're going to have a live stream, Eastern Standard Time. Not OJ. Thanks for coming, guys. See ya.